Well, hello, good morning, and welcome to Blabbit. Blabbit's where we bring experts in to pick their brains and learn something from people that we normally wouldn't get a chance to visit with online. Blabbit is brought to you by Open Doors. Open Doors is your premier location for any business looking to improve their communications and their internal podcasting systems. For anyone that's not been here before, my name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working with, training, coaching people in the sales realm for the better part of the last 2 decades and enjoy helping people become better listeners so that they can be better speakers. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well, Glenn. I was just pondering, how is it that we're able to get such talented experts to come on this show with us? How does that happen?
We just tricked them.
Yeah. I think it's gift cards and and promises of exotic vacations, something like that. Anyway, good to see everyone. I'm Paul Geiger. I am a presentation coach, public speaking coach out of New York City. And I work with organizations and individuals really primarily on three things. Number one, mitigating their public speaking fear, those nerves, hate those. Second thing is making sure that they're very clear about getting their messaging across, and therefore they're really interesting speakers. And number three, getting rid of any of those unwanted speech habits, whether you know you have them or you don't. So that's me in a nutshell. Hey, Alaina, great to have you back. Tell everybody about you.
Yeah, great to be here, Paul and Glenn. Thanks for having me back. So I work with multiple 6- and 7-figure business owners and help them scale their business sustainably. And so all too often, people who have gotten to that level of success usually comes at the cost of sacrifice of their time, their health, or their relationships. And what I allow them to do is be able to scale their business, a minimum of tripling their income, but 20 or 30 lessing their hours a week, which is pretty spectacular, so they can reclaim their lives.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me ask you this, because I've had this conversation several times over the last couple of years. What's the biggest obstacle that you have to help people overcome to get out of their own way and achieve that balance? Because making money is great, having a business that's successful is great, but if you work yourself to death and don't take time to enjoy it, why are we really doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Glenn. To me, that's the only definition of failure, right? So failure is being quote unquote successful, but not being able to enjoy your life at all because of the life you've created in your business. And, I remember the last time I was on your show, one of the things that you said is it's the 6 inches between your ears, right? So, and that really is it. And over the last year, 15 months or so, I've been working with a different modality that I've been searching for 2 years to help me fast track my clients clearing their limiting beliefs and their blocks so that they could really move forward much faster. And I finally found it. It took me 2 years, but I'm glad to say I did. And what I actually can do is I can go into people's subconscious minds directly and at a DNA level remove the blocks and the limiting beliefs that they have in their subconscious mind, often which has been passed down either intergenerationally from their ancestors or from society that they've picked up. There's a lot of societal limiting beliefs. And so what I'm able to do is actually not only remove it from them at a DNA level from their subconscious mind, but then also teach them the tools of how to continue the work on their own and tap into their intuition on demand. It's like that 3 a.m. genius moments on demand so that they're able to move forward and scale and always know that the action that they're taking is moving them in the direction that they want to go rather than trying to figure out what they're meant to be doing and working really hard and throwing a lot of stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Give us an idea, Alaina, of what some of those limiting beliefs are, either the ones that are societal based or generated or the ones that are generational. What just maybe the top 3 that normally happen? It doesn't have to be 3. I mean, I'm sure describing one is going to take us for a while, but whatever you've got for us. Thank you.
Yeah. So Paul, I would say I have to work hard to succeed is a really big one. And there's, excuse me, there's a couple of them that come up around that. So I have to work hard to succeed. Success can't be easy. Nothing of value comes easy. Those are kind of all related, because when we think about it, we think, oh, the things that are really valuable, we have to work really hard for. Not true. And then there's a lot of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not deserving. And so those are probably the ones that cause the most shame and guilt and blocks in the process.
Mhm. Okay, now I just had a thought, and that is, as much as you want to remove those limiting beliefs, does some of that narrative make its way into the way that you promote yourself, your business, and the things that you do? In other words, is that merely an internal dialogue, or is that something that shows up in terms of how you promote your business?
It definitely shows up in terms of how I promote my business, because you know, when you get to the level of multiple six figures, you figured out some strategy. You think you're still probably thinking that there's another strategy that's going to help you get further along. I'll give you my example for me, because last year, in spring, I was working with a mindset coach working with a mindset coach, and and what this coach had told me was, two or three different strategies that they recommended that I use for my business to take my business to the next level. And I literally was just working on the blocks in this manner that I'm telling you. And within, I don't know, so it was probably from like early May till January of this year, I 5 times my income, and I literally did nothing different. No strategy was different. I didn't implement any of the things that they told me to do, and I 5 times my income effortlessly, like effortlessly. And the point was, I just changed how I was seeing the world and how I was seeing myself in my business. And then it was like everything lined up after that. And that is what I see with my clients typically. Is like, I used to work a lot with strategies and helping people create bespoke strategies for themselves. And then what I realized is that they could have the perfect strategy, but if they don't have the right mindset and they still have the blocks around the strategy, then that strategy isn't going to work no matter how hard they work it.
Well, that sounds similar to an industry that I work in primarily, and different people that I've kind of spoken with, coached, mentored, if you will. And it's very hard for people to kind of comprehend. I think that, going from zero to $100,000 a year, whatever, is more difficult than going from 100 to $500,000 a year. Because when you have better processes, when you have better systems, when you have other people to delegate those to, you can accomplish a lot more and work a lot less. So with your coaching and stuff like that, how much of that are you helping them maybe refine, evaluate system strategies and things like that, so that they can work on what they're effective at, what they do well at, and maybe find someone else to do the things that they really don't want to do that take up more time than it should?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what I experience is that when entrepreneurs come to me, they usually have some team to begin with. Like when you're at that level of multiple six figures, you normally have some team to begin with. They may not be effective leaders, which is a major issue, right? So, it isn't that the issue is the team, it's that they're not effective leaders. They don't understand how to either both, I would say, both often lead their clients and their team really powerfully. And so one of the things I will work with is leadership, but that's very different than systems, because when you're understanding what's blocking you in your way, you're understanding how to manage your energy throughout the day and how to utilize your energy in a way that works for you rather than working against it, which is what organically shaves time off of people's work week. You start to see what systems you need and what's not working in those systems. So it's like every once in a while I'll insert myself in that, but what I find is that people actually really know what to do. They just don't necessarily know how to do it, or they believe they can't do it. And so when that switches up so that they understand, oh, I absolutely can do this, I'm an empowered being that's able to make this happen, then all of those things just seem to magically fall into place because they're being somebody that they need to be to run, their next level business.
Do you ever run into situations where you, along with your clients, are achieving these things, but then there's a lack of confidence, there's a backslide? What do you do in those cases to course correct?
Yeah, that's a great thing. A great question. So I don't find that there's generally backslide. Here's what kind of happens. So I'm going to use my phone as an example. Like you guys can see this, right? So people are here and they keep hitting their comfort zone, right? This is their comfort zone. They keep bouncing off of their comfort zone. What I help them do is remove the wall so they can go past their comfort zone, so that they can be like way out over here. But in the process of that, we all have these subconscious self-sabotage patterns that makes us want to put the wall back up and, move back over here. So what I am really masterful at is understanding people's self-sabotage patterns, so that whether they came to me and they were on the feast or famine roller coaster to begin with, or they've hit an income ceiling, when they can spot the self-sabotage pattern, understand what they use to take themselves out, because every one of us has a self-sabotage pattern, but it's unique to us. And that the subconscious mind will prey on our biggest insecurities to get us to buy in that this is really happening for us, and we need to take our eye off the prize and put our eye on whatever else is happening, so that then we drop back down in income. But when you can start to really identify without judgment those self-sabotage patterns, you will understand how to move through them and not let them take you out. And you do that a couple of times and you no longer have that pattern in the way. It's not to say that you don't still hit thresholds, income ceilings, but you do the same thing that you did before to remove that income ceiling and then move to the next level.
Well, it's nice to know. It's nice to know. Hold on, Glenn, one sec. It's nice to know that we all have a unique limiting belief, because my mommy always said that I was special.
Yes, you are. You definitely are.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit more, because I've said for years that comfortability is the biggest obstacle to success. So when you have people that are at that comfort level, and then maybe a bit of imposter syndrome sits in, and they think, do I really deserve this? Can I really go beyond this? How do you help them to get out of their own way and to achieve the goals instead of limiting themselves?
Yeah, well, that takes me back to the beginning of what I was talking about. Because when we clear the limiting beliefs, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy. Like, for example, my issue was less about making money and more about keeping it. There was a deservability thing about keeping it. So every time I'd make a lot of money, I would literally tank my business so that I would like drop back down. And then the shame and the guilt would kick in. So it would really be a slow start for me to, achieve next level. So when you clear those beliefs at the root of where they are, then you're unencumbered by them. Now, some beliefs, like maybe I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough, run pretty deep. They've been around for the person's entire life. And so we might take a layer off, and then they'll be walking along, moving along on their path, and then run into it again from a different perspective. And then we'll clear it from that perspective again. And if we do that a few times, usually it clears it fully. It may take a little bit of time. For most limiting beliefs, they clear pretty quickly. For the super deep ones, it does take a little bit of layering to get in, because usually people aren't ready to have the entire thing eliminated all at once, but they're able to move forward with ease until they run into it again, and we just do another layer of clearing of it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
It does.
without a doubt. So how do you, I know for anyone who perhaps has that limiting belief of work hard, make the money, earn it, how do you work less and make more?
Yeah, great question. So when you get out of your own way, when you no longer have those limiting beliefs in the first place, you naturally know what action to take that will move you forward. Like when you're tuned in, as I called it, the 3 a.m. genius, and you can tap into it on demand, then you understand. Like I had a client, it was very funny. He was going away this weekend, and I've taught him these skills. And he tuned into, what am I going to do that's going to sabotage myself this weekend? Because he was spending the weekend with his family. And he understood what exactly was going to happen, and he was able to clear it so it didn't happen. So he could have a different experience this weekend, right? And so that is one of the things that my clients are able to do. So there's a couple of things: removing the limiting beliefs, as we've been talking about, and then looking, where is your energy going? So for example, some of my clients might be, with the exception of the time they're with their family, depends on if they're single or if they have kids, they may be working from the time they wake up in the morning till the time they go to sleep, right? It's like almost every waking minute that they're not committed to something else, they want to be working because they feel, the people that I work with are super high achievers and they always can see much more for them. And that does tend to be a lot of shame and guilt for not being where they think they want to be. So they're driving themselves really hard all the time, right? When I look at how they're spending their energy during the day, I can actually reorganize how they're spending their time to work with their energy. And that automatically shaves 3 hours a day off of their work week. And then we'll get strategic. What are you spending your time on? How are you spending your time? Who should be doing this instead of you? Is it really important to even do? And when we start to focus on, because so many people are busy, they're really busy, but that doesn't mean that they're focused on the actions that actually move their business forward. So when they start understanding what are the actions that are going to be moving my business forward and focus on income producing activities and the way to do them, then they're able to scale their income and significantly reduce their hours. Usually within, like, when I work with my clients, within 30 days, less than 30 days, they've shaved off 20 hours off of their work week. Some of my clients as much as 30 hours off of their work week before they even delegate. And then usually within 30 to 90 days, they're able to triple their income.
So let's talk a little bit about that when they shave some time off, understanding, learning that there is a balance, that not is just that 4-letter word work. There's also the 4-letter word life that's a little bit better.
Yes.
The reason I ask this is because for years it drove people, when I used to have a job, crazy with my schedule and things like this. But it's been for the last 2 decades. I bet I haven't worked 10 Friday afternoons in there, because I know if I worked hard Monday through Thursday, Friday afternoon I can start my weekend. And then it gives you some times, whether it's once a weekend you're going to travel or do something like this, to have that time to refresh, reset. So can we talk a little bit more about the importance of that, working harder or smarter versus harder, and actually having some time to yourself so that you don't burn out?
So important. I love that you do that, Glenn. It's really important because most people think the harder I work, the more successful I'll be, right? That's where that limiting belief comes in. And what they don't realize is that when you're not working, when you're actually in a space of joy, doing things that really light you up with people you love to do them with, that it actually resources you in a very different way. So it gives you more internal resources. It connects you to source more easily so that you are tapped into ideas and inspiration and higher levels of intelligence and able to see opportunities that you couldn't see before. One of the ways that I help people shave time is that so many of the entrepreneurs that come to me, they're in their sympathetic nervous system most of the time. They're in some level of stress, AKA fight, flight, or freeze at some level, right? And what that does is it means it's moving blood away from your neofrontal cortex back to your amygdala. And it has you not being able to see the opportunities. And as I said, have those inspiration and ideas and access to higher levels of intelligence. When you move into your parasympathetic nervous system, something that took you 2 hours before because you were like working to grind it out can now take you a half an hour. And so having those moments of time, and actually they've done studies about people who work more than 55 hours a week, any hour after 55, it's like you're working backwards. You're really not productive at all. And so they're not only wasting their time, they're exhausting themselves, they're burning themselves out, and then they're less productive in the hours that they actually are working. And if they just spent some time enjoying their life, bringing joy to their life, they would find that their business accelerated really fast. And that's what my clients do. And for me, it's really important to work on those limiting beliefs simultaneously, because I have had clients where I help them shave hours off and then they just fill it with more business, right? If they don't clear those beliefs that I have to work hard to succeed, then they're just busier again in their business.
More of the same stuff.
Yes.
Is basically what it becomes. Now, I understand that this whole process begins with a mindset shift. There has to be that shift that occurs. But what are some of the actual strategies that you would provide in general terms to an individual who has had a certain amount of success, but wants to take it to the next level, whatever that might be? I know often we generalize and say 6 figures to 7.
Right.
You know, how, what's aside? I know the mindset is important, but is there an actual strategy? In other words, I've cleared the field. Let's take action. What do we do?
You've just said it though. I've cleared the field and let's take action. Because when you clear the field, you understand the kind of action to take. So what ends up happening with most entrepreneurs is they start to take action and they start to go outside of that comfort zone. And then, as we talked about, they self-sabotage and they go backwards, right? When you remove the self-sabotage, you keep going forwards. There's no backwards momentum. You just keep going forwards. So by removing the self-sabotaging patterns, by removing the limiting beliefs that was causing them to create self-sabotage, that was causing them to feel like I'm not deserving of more, that's causing them to feel like I'm not worthy of being able to have this, or not understanding how to be a powerful leader. By clearing all of these things up, I mean, I do teach my clients some communication skills. I, can insert myself in various different aspects of their business. I've been a business coach for 8 years, so I understand how to do that. But very little of it is really the strategic or systems part of it. Most of it is really like 95% is really the mindset shifts and removing those limiting beliefs. And when you can tune into what's in your highest good to do in your business, it moves you forward effortlessly. You're just not, hitting those speed bumps and hitting those walls anymore. And then it creates its own momentum, Paul, so that it's like you can get in a car get in front of a car at the top of the hill that's in neutral and you could stop it. But once that car starts down the hill, I would not get in front of that car to try to stop it if it's in neutral, right? And so that's what starts to happen. You're in flow. You have a momentum that leads itself. And that's where people move to. And people have a hard time wrapping their heads around like, okay, but what's the strategy? You already have the strategy. You know what to do. You actually know what to do. And it's just that you're getting in your own way of understanding how to execute on that because of what's going on between your ears.
So if you believe you can, you're right. And if you believe you can't, you're right also?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I love that Henry Ford quote because it's so true. It's so true. And you can consciously, it's like when people think about the clients that I work with, they think, oh my God, they have so much self-belief. They've done more than what most entrepreneurs dream of doing, right? They've already done that already. And so they think they've got tons of self-belief, but you'd be amazed at how much they're lacking to take themselves to the next level. So even though consciously they may have the belief, they may know consciously, of course I can do this. Of course I can get myself to 7 figures. Subconsciously, there's still that doubt. There's still that questioning if they're worthy enough to do it. They're still questioning, is it going to be too much for me if I do this? Am I going to overwork if I'm overworking now and I'm at, $300,000 a year, then what's that going to be like when I'm at 7 figures? And it's things like that actually are getting in the way of them, that when they clear that and they realize, oh, I'm actually really supported. I understand how to do this and I understand what I need. And as I get to the next level, the information, because I'm tuned into universal intelligence now, right? Universal intelligence knows every thought that's ever been thought and ever will be thought already exists in the now. Already exists in the now. And when you're able to tap into that on demand, you don't think that universal intelligence knows how to help you have a 7-figure business? Of course it does. And it knows how to do it with the most ease and grace.
Now, it would seem to me that, to use your term, overachievers or no, you didn't say overachievers. You actually said high achievers. You may have meant overachievers, but there tends to be quite a bit of ambition and hubris that goes into a personality that's able to accomplish the things, the starting position that most of your clients start from. Is that something that must be tempered? Because you brought up something really interesting before. You said, mindset coach, working with a mindset coach. In other words, you having enough humility and understanding and awareness to know when to tap into your alternative resources to take you to the next level. So is usually that sense of ambition? Is that a big one that can get in the way? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. When I think about ambition, I wrote a post about it, I think last week. It's kind of like the dark side of ambition, right? So the way ambition is held societally is the ego perspective of it, right? I'm going to call it the dark side of ambition. It's the fame, it's the fortune, it's the I need to prove myself. I need to create this in my business to prove myself to usually a parent. That's usually who they're proving themselves to, and then at some point to themselves. And so that is the dark side, the societal side. And I do have to say that I have yet to work with a client who isn't trying to prove themselves by their accomplishments, who hasn't identified, and I can relate to this, I have as well, hasn't identified their self-worth with their accomplishment and net worth. And so part of what we do, there's nothing wrong with ambition. There's nothing wrong with having a big purpose and coming here to fulfill that purpose. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you remove the ego side of that, when you remove the shadow side of that, so that what's left is really being here to express the fullness of who you are and stepping into the next level of purpose, it becomes, I'm a still highly ambitious person, right? But it's no longer chasing the outcomes for me. It's understanding that my role here, my purpose here in this lifetime is big. I got a big purpose and I'm here to help a lot of people. And I can step into that willingly, with desire, with my passion to step into that. But it doesn't need, that ambition doesn't need to be the driving force, where if I'm not accomplishing what I think I should be, if I'm not performing at those elite levels, then it means there's something wrong with me, right? Because that's what so much happens with my clients, is then they internalize not being able to go to the next level because they know it's in them. They do know it's in them. They know it's possible, but they've tried a lot of things and nothing has seemed to have broken them through. And so they internalize that there's something wrong with them, or can I even really do this? Do I know for sure I can do this? And so when we start realigning them with their true why, right, then their ambition lines up to really support them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So I'm sorry, Paul. So I have a question, because with me and the way my brain works, and I'm kind of a numbers person, I look at systems and mindset and what has happened to me over the years and how they integrate with one, and maybe a chicken or an egg type of thing. Because I know we all are easily distracted. It's easy to go in a ton of different directions and spend a lot of time working more than you need to. So me personally, when my mind shifted and I had a schedule that says from 8 to 9, 8:45, I'm working on this and I'm not going to look at emails. I'm going to take a 10-minute break. From 10 to 10:30, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take a 5-minute break. So I can focus all on one thing with a mindset, but I'm also organized. It's amazing how much more work you do and how much less of a time. So how much do those kind of intertwine with the people that you're coaching and helping?
It depends on the person. There are some people who are more like you, Glenn, who prefer to be very scheduled and very systematic. And for those types of people, that really works to hold them to it. What I would do with a person more like you is make sure that you have these gap moments during the day where if something comes up, you can take care of it and it doesn't throw your whole schedule off. Because people who tend to schedule like that, what ends up happening is if some urgency comes up that they have to tend to, it'll throw their whole day off and take them out. And then they're kind of scrambling. They're not totally sure what to do. And so you fill in those gap moments that allow for spaciousness to see, okay, something comes up, I need a longer break, or I ended up having a conversation with this person I didn't expect to, it went longer. And you accommodate those types of things, those kind of unexpected things in your schedule that way. And then there's other people who, like me, I don't actually schedule my time like that. I do schedule my clients like that. So for example, I have my clients, I will keep clients out of Fridays. So Fridays are my day to work on my business instead of working in my business. And then Monday through Thursday, I will schedule clients within a certain amount of hours, and then also have other hours for sales calls or networking calls or things of that nature, right? But then I know I've got at least an hour or two a day to work on my project of the day. So that's what I'll do during that time, is like, okay, this is the project I'm going to work on today. I might work on it 15 minutes here. I might work on it 30 minutes there if I have a little time, but I know that's the thing I'm going to get done today. And that's what I do. And for me, that works for me. I prefer not to be, I like to keep my clients within a time frame. But then the rest of the day, I'm more flexible with my time. So it really depends on the client that I'm working with and what works best for their energy. You know, for certain clients, they find that they can't really focus. Like a lot of my clients are major content creators, and they find that certain times of the day they can't focus on content, on creating content. So we look at, okay, what's the best time of the day for you to do that? Where's your energy work best for you to do that? And then all of a sudden, by just making that one tiny little shift, it will switch up. They'll shave like an hour or two off of their day, because now they're working with their energy instead of against their energy. So it really depends on the person. Like what I do is kind of, in terms of time, is very bespoke, where I have certain parameters or guidelines that I will use to help people, but then I'll look at how they work best and then design something that works for them so that they could be working with their energy instead of against their energy, and with their mindset instead of against their mindset.
Can I ask a follow-up on there, Paul? How do
Sure.
you identify that? Because I know personally I'm more creative in the mornings, and by lunch, if I try and do stuff, I'm going to spend 2 to 3 times longer doing it after lunch than if I do it between 8 and noon. So how do you help people kind of identify what their spirit or when their time is for them to be productive, doing A versus B or C?
Time tracking. So I
Okay.
will have a client time track for a week and let me know, when are they feeling most distracted? When are they feeling this? What are they having difficulty doing at this time? And then we'll discuss it. I'll discuss what they time tracked, and then I could very quickly, I'll see patterns. Like that's just one of my gifts, is to be able to see those patterns, and I'll go, oh, okay, that's what's going on here. Or they'll tell me what's going on. Like I'm having, you just said it, right? I know I'm creative in the morning, and if I try to do something in the afternoon, so would we try to have you create content in the afternoon? No. Help you design a schedule so you're doing that all in the morning, because that's when your energy can focus on those kinds of things, right? So that will be like in just a conversation that I have with my clients, and then the time tracking, I'll understand what's happening in their schedule, where the patterns are, you know, that will help me really understand how do they work best throughout the day.
So is it a matter of taking the things that are not in your wheelhouse, that are not really the things that bring you joy or tap into your creativity, tap into your power? Do you put those during your lower points, or do you delegate those things to somebody else? Which, and I'm sure it's both.
I like the delegation.
The delegation is key. The delegation is really key. So like I've just hired a lot of team recently in the past month. Like I no longer want to write my own content. I'm a great copywriter. I think I'm a great copywriter, but I no longer want to write my own content. It's not in my highest good to spend my time writing content the way that I write content. It's in somebody else's. I'd rather pay them to do that. So I've gotten to the point, I'm in the process of rebranding myself. I've just hired a new team member to help me on a different level. All of those things feel like I don't want to be doing those things anymore. And when I tune into what brings me joy and where I'm best spent in my business, then it's how do I either minimize doing those things, do them at a time that I can do them most efficiently, and or my preference is to delegate them to somebody else. Now, what I experience, this is so frequent in business, is people have gotten to a certain level of income, right? And a lot of times their expenses, for people who are at the lower multiple six figures, it can even actually happen with higher six-figure businesses, where their expenses feel like it eats up so much of their income that they're really not paying themselves that much, right? They have so many expenses. And the idea is like, oh my God, am I going to pay another team member to do this for me not to do it. And what they don't realize is that by freeing up that energy that's weighing them down, they actually make significantly more money in the process. But they're so afraid of taking on the other expense to hire somebody to delegate to, that they feel like they'd rather wait till they see the money in their business first. And it's like, hire before you're ready. I have had so many of my clients hire before they're ready, and then their income shoots up dramatically as a result of that, because now what was weighing them down is no longer weighing them down, and they can focus on income producing activities.
So one more question, Glenn. Is it a matter of hiring somebody else to do those things, or do you need to learn how to do those things so you can create SOPs for various aspects of your business? What do you think, Glenn? Do you think you need to learn them in your business so then you can delegate them in the correct way? Is that the best way to create those systems of process?
It depends on how much you're scaling, because if you don't know how to do them, then you can identify if someone is slacking and can be more productive. So in my businesses that I've had, yes, I've had to learn how to do them. That way, if someone says, I can't do this, I can say, yes, you can. You have to go here, here, or you have to go and do this stuff. And the one thing that's key for these people that I preach every day is, when you're doing this training, make a video. So you have to do the training once, but then you can train 10, 20, 50, 100 people.
Nice. I love that. Video is king.
Yeah. Well, and what I liked about what you were just talking about there, Alaina, is a lot of times, we think we're going up and down and up and down. But if you are investing in your future with people, you're doing that same kind of thing, but you're getting higher highs and not as low lows, because I firmly believe in that. When I have with my team's 80% busy, I need to bring on another team member, because otherwise I'm not prepared for that next new challenge, for that next new client. So how do you get it through people's thick head that, yes, if we spend a little bit more, you're investing in your company, in yourself, so that you can make more. If you don't invest, you are going to have those limitations.
Yeah, great question. And I like your analogy with the income going up like that, because I do think that that's what happens. And by the way, I agree with you wholeheartedly about having a certain level of proficiency. I don't think you need to be like, the idea is taking on somebody who's better at it than you. That's the idea. But if you don't have a baseline level of proficiency, I don't think that you understand if they're doing a great job, if they're on it or not, or what can be done. And at the same time, when you start doing all the clearing, like, it's just a limiting belief that's keeping people from believing that it's fear, right? It's fear that, am I going to make enough money to cover this expense? Because now I'm taking on another expense, right? And so when you move through the fear in the same way that I've been talking about moving through all the other limiting beliefs, then it allows you to tune in. And like I said, when I teach my clients how to have access to that intelligence, that genius, right? They tap into that intuition on demand. You can ask. You can ask what's in your highest good. Like, I have my clients challenge themselves all the time. And I'm like, okay, here's what I see. Here's what I think that you should do. Tune in and ask for yourself. And then they always come up like that. It's very reassuring. It may not completely eliminate the fear, because the thing that's going to eliminate the fear is them taking action. That's going to eliminate the fear, to see that they took action and it's working, right? Because they're moving into the unknown, and the unknown uncertainty tends to be what freaks us out and makes us have that fear in the first place. So when they tune in and they can understand, oh, this is in my highest good. This is what's going to happen if I actually hire this person. This is what's possible for me. Then it makes it easier for them to take on those team members and start scaling at a much higher level.
So I want to ask you
I apologize that I was slacking a little bit real quick, Paul.
Oh, yeah,
Lisa
sure.
David Olson gave some hands claps and some loves. And then she asked a question about 10 minutes ago, so maybe we can remember what it was. She goes, what is a strategy one can use in the heat of the moment, like a confrontation with a supervisor? We never have confrontations with supervisors, do we?
Nobody's in charge here, Glenn.
Great question, Lisa. So what I would say is that when you start doing this work, at the beginning, it'll be a little tougher. But when you start doing this work, you understand, like, Oh, there's what they call proactive and reactive clearing. So I have my clients proactively clear their limiting beliefs. And in the process of proactively clearing their limiting beliefs, a lot of the things that would come up that would cause a reaction will get cleared. And then there's reactive clearing. So something just happened. You're in a conflict. And then you can understand, you can literally tune in and find out what's going on. I'll tell you, I have a perfect example. I have a client who's a chiropractor. She has a multiple six-figure business, and her partner happens to be her partner. And so her partner has a tendency to be really late, and it's really bothersome for her. And she normally gets very reactive about it. His car was in the shop, and so she needed to get to the office and wanted him to move it along. And normally she would have been very reactive about that. And she tuned in, she got what to say to him, right? She said it to him, he got dressed, and they left on time. And she was like, oh my God, that's never happened before. And it's like, yes, because normally you come from a reactive space, right? So because you're coming from a reactive space, what happens is the other person becomes defensive and they meet you with that level of reactivity, and then conflict escalates. And what's able to happen now is that you're able to de-escalate the conflict because you can tune in like, okay, what's really going on here for me? What's, what it would be the best thing for me to say in this situation to de-escalate it or to make sure that I'm heard, but in a way that lands for the other person. And then that information can come through and it allows you to de-escalate and move forward more easily without that, those speed bumps.
Now, is that a bit of that thought of we tend to play the story out before it actually happens? That is that repetitive behavior, those repetitive reactions. I use that phrase a lot. Don't play out the story before it actually happens.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is we have all been conditioned to make meaning out of circumstances mean something specific, right? Based on our programming, based on our past programming. And so something will happen. Instead of seeing it for what it is, for what's really going on, that narrative, that story is already looping. And we want to ascribe the same meaning to that circumstance that we experienced in the past. So we're just projecting our past experiences onto the present situation rather than seeing the present situation for what it is. And when you can get yourself out of that loop and see it for what it really is, oh, why would that even bother me? What's really going on with that? What's the truth here? And you can bring in the truth and then integrate the truth on a subconscious level. You get to have a totally different experience.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring up that subject with the chiropractors, because I've been really focusing on validation lately, and in the form of which I phrase the question. So instead of saying we need to leave right now because we're going to be late, maybe saying we have this going on. I need to be a few moments early. When would you be ready to leave?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that makes a big difference on how you ask the question, especially in the heat of the moment?
Yes, yes, it does. It does. Questions can be helpful, but if somebody doesn't actually care that, they don't have an issue with time and they don't care if they're late, the question is, why are they tuning you out in the first place? And they're tuning you out because you've been reactive with them consistently. And most people don't want to pay attention, when they're being nagged or tuned, when that's happening. And so being able to say something in a completely different way, whether it's a question, whether it's posed as a question or it's posed as a statement, allows for a different experience to happen in that relationship. It's a pattern interrupt, right? So somebody's accustomed to you reacting a specific way to what's going on, and then you respond, you become responsive rather than reactive. And it's a pattern interrupt that they're like, okay, I get that. That was different, And it also, I have to say, there is this thing that I understand communication between men and women, how men communicate differently from women. And so men tend to feel like they're particularly nagged like their mom. They don't want to be their partner to be like their mom, right? Men react really well or respond really well to women expressing their feelings. If a woman steps to a man with logic, he wants to win that. Like he'll go to the mat for that usually, right? That's what he wants to do. He knows the logic game. He's got that dialed in. When a woman steps to a man with feelings, melts right there, right? He doesn't want to deny the feelings. And so for women, a lot of the women who work with me, I work with both men and women, but a lot of the women who work with me are very male dominant energy, and they felt like they've had to in their business. And so it requires moving into their feminine energy more and balancing that masculine and feminine energy so they can invoke the masculine out of their man rather than emasculating their man.
Okay. Now, does the door swing both ways? In other words, what do Glenn and I need to do to improve in terms of our communication?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So one of the things that I feel like men do is when women become reactive, they go immediately into the story that makes them want to tune out. Right? So their story is, this feels nagging, this feels like they're blaming, this feels like a lot of things that men tend to feel is, oh, the woman's not respecting me because she should know that I'm able to do this, right? She should know that I could take care of this. And the way she's acting isn't acting like she knows that I could take care of it. That's what I see happen a lot with men. And so they tend to feel disrespected by the women they're with. And for them to unravel where that really comes from is so helpful for them not to be reactive in that moment and understand a woman's not feeling heard, right? That's really what's happening, is a woman's not feeling heard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I often go to the place of, well, yeah, I can fix that. Yeah. All you have to do is fix it. You know,
Right,
this
exactly.
is, I go to the logic side, and it's not, it's about
Right.
being heard. It's not about,
Right.
I'm asking you for a solution. I'm just expressing what's
Yeah.
going on. So I've learned that much.
Well, that's a lot. That's a really important piece of it, though, Paul, because it is like women have a tendency to just want to express themselves and not be fixed, and men go into fix it mode. And so if you can stop that and listen, or even ask a question of like, how would it be best for me to support you? Do you want advice on this, or do you just want me to listen? Like, that's super powerful for a man to say to a woman, because it's like, wow, he like really is hearing what's going on for me here, or wants to be there for me.
Right. But wait a minute. Hold on. If you have to ask that question, does that fall into the trick bag of, do you have to ask?
No, it doesn't. I don't think women would say, do you have to ask? Now, I do tell women to tell men what they want too, so that it's not all on you. It's like, okay, if you really want to be heard and not be fixed, then say, what I really need from you right now is just to listen and not try to fix the situation, but just to really listen to me, because I just need to be able to express it. It's important to go both ways. It's not on just, the onus isn't on just one, but it's understanding relationship dynamics and how to communicate. And to be honest, a lot of these dynamics work in team too. So when I help my clients understand how to lead more effectively, what I'm essentially teaching them is how to communicate more effectively, how to be a more powerful communicator.
And then one of the tricks I learned, Paul, when my daughters were in the late teens, early 20s, when they would actually rarely ask for an opinion, I would say, that's interesting. What do you think about that? And then let them have an opinion, and then say, boy, I think that's a great idea. And I became a lot wiser when I quit sharing my opinion.
Yeah. That goes back to that Mark Twain quote, right? Well, we've discussed that before. I have this is going to be a greedy question on my part, because you were talking before about fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I often tell my clients that, and of course, when we talk about fear, one of the biggest fears is public speaking fear. It's the fear of either speaking to an individual or a group, because some people go, no, I can't speak in front of a group. Well, you also, if the individual is a VIP and the stakes are high, you're going to feel the same thing. So it's not a matter of overcoming or losing the fear. I always tell everyone, there are so many circumstances that go into these communications that we have that we don't have control over, that you do have to learn to habituate with a little bit of the forces that will be coming towards you. Is there some getting accustomed to it that goes into the advice that you give surrounding fear in that way? Or are we talking about two very different fears? Because you brought up the frontal awareness of things, the logic, and the more
Yeah,
Yeah.
critter brain, critter brain.
And that's really the caveman brain. Right.
Right.
So, and we experience the same thing when we have public speaking fear. We go into the fight, flight, or freeze
Yes.
mode. And that becomes one of the biggest challenges, or really one of the biggest tasks that I'm asked to deal with people, is overcoming that. Overcoming it means learning how to live with it, within
Mhm.
it, because it flows toward you. It's one of those things you don't control. What are your thoughts in relationship to the fear that you were talking about a few minutes ago in regard to
I
that?
do think you control it. I do think you control it. So that's where I would differ. So one of the things that I would say, I'm going to use me as a perfect example. I used to have a real fear of public speaking. Now, speaking on a podcast, in conversation, one-on-one with clients, even a group on a Zoom, not so much of a big deal. Getting on stage used to be a really big deal, and my mind used to go completely blank. And unless I had memorized my talk, I would forget every single thing I was wanted to say. And what I realized when I started doing deeper tune-ins in understanding what's the limiting belief there, it's that I had to be impressive. Right. So it's that I had to be impressive. And then what was I doing? I was making it about me instead of the audience. So I am there to share my knowledge, which I have a lots of, like a depth of. Like, that's not the issue. The issue isn't that I don't have knowledge. That's not the issue, right? It's a fear that I'm not going to seem smart or impress the people that I'm talking to. Once I worked through that, it shifted a lot of my experience of being, in front of groups because of that, right? So it's not to say that I don't feel the bodily sensations. I might feel the bodily sensations. I don't make up a story anymore about those sensations. And I can say that, for example, anxiety or fear and excitement light up the same part of the brain, right? The only difference is the perception of the outcome. That's the only difference between the fear and the excitement. And so when I start feeling like that, I will just consciously say, oh, I'm excited to do this. Like, I could feel the excitement in my body. That's what that is. It's the excitement.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I was leveling up my income, I had that same experience. And my ego mind, my subconscious mind, wanted to tell me it was anxiety. It was excitement that I was moving to a very different level, and I was starting to see massive change in what was happening in my business. My body needed to catch up a little bit to that from where I was. But in the process of that, I just learned, oh, that's not actually anxiety. That's just excitement. That's all that
Yeah.
is, right?
Right.
So once I started doing that, once you start unpacking, okay, what's really going on for you? What is the fear? What is the fear that that person is having? And then you remove that limiting belief, and then you do the training. Because I do think, like in everything I do, there is the mindset piece, there's the limiting belief or removing the blocks and the limiting beliefs, and then there's the action piece. Action is imperative. Like, doing all of this stuff but not taking action is useless, right? It's totally useless. It's imperative that you take action. And so for that, for, like, say, your clients, it would mean now putting yourself in situations to grow the fortitude, maybe to grow the level of, like, oh, I could do this, right? Because confidence is one of those things that grows through action. We think that we're confident first and then we go and do it, but actually we gain confidence from gaining proficiency. And so the more you do it, the more you put yourself out there and understand, okay, if it's not perfect the first couple times, yeah, so what? I've had horrible performances because I've gotten in my own way, and I look at that and go, wow, that was a great learning for me not to ever do that again.
Hey, now, Glenn, you've been involved. You were involved with athletics in high school and college, and isn't that what sports psychologists say? What Alaina just said about excitement, about fear and excitement, how they replace it. All of the athletic coaches, they tap into that fine line between fear and excitement, which allows you to play in the big game.
And I think that's interesting because I've always been a fan of psychology. It was my minor. And so, I mean, understanding those of us that are perceived as weird, that like the new things, like the new challenging, like doing something because I'm getting a little bit of that adrenaline. I'm getting those endorphins. It's not fear. I get motivated to do stuff like this that scares the hell out of people. And then when I'm not doing stuff like that, I get bored. And that's where the fear comes in for me versus the opposite for a lot of people.
Fear of boredom and taking a nap.
Yeah.
There's got to be some scientific term for that.
Well, and we had a coach that was kind of an odd coach back in high school. Owen was with us for a year or two and then went on doing something else. But the one thing that he preached for us with sports was psychocybernosis. So the night before, thinking about making that catch, thinking about sinking a basket, thinking about doing what you're doing. And if you're thinking about it prior, it gets into that subconscious. And when it happens, something similar to that the next game or whatever, you're reacting, you're not being proactive. And so you're moving a lot quicker because you've already done it in your head.
That's the positive aspect of playing out the story in your head.
Mm-hmm.
That's the complete opposite of the negative drain that
Mm-hmm.
mindset can give you. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the power of visualization, right? So I like to call them feelingizations, though, because what really rewires the brain, what really helps broadcast something different to the universe, is marrying the visuals, like moving through that in your head. So, like, for example, understanding what is it, what will that feel like? Oh no, what seeing yourself on stage, right? So in your case, Paul, what we were talking about, seeing yourself on stage, but then also have the feelings of it, like the feeling of like seeing the audience be really captivated by what you're talking about, how that feels, knowing you got off stage and they gave you a tremendous applause and they really appreciated what you said, feeling what it feels like to have people come up after you and talk to you about it and how that would feel. Like marrying the visual with the feeling really embeds and starts to change those neurosynaptic connections, because your brain doesn't know the difference between something real and something imagined. So when you imagine it with all of your senses, you are rewiring your brain. So that's a great thing to do, Glenn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think definitely we've realized that next time we have Alaina on, we may have to do like a 3 or 4 hour podcast, Paul, because an hour just isn't really enough.
I'm up for it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Alaina.
much for joining
Great.
us. If anybody would want to reach out and contact you, what's the best way to do so?
There's two ways they can reach out and contact me. And actually, I'll be starting a new program on this work called 6 into 7 at the end of April. So if you're interested in finding out more information, you could reach out to me at support@alainaschwartz.com or LinkedIn. I hang out quite a bit on LinkedIn, which is how I met both of you. And so you can find me on LinkedIn at Alaina Schwartz. And I answer every single person who reaches out to me personally.
Wow. She's a real overachiever, Glenn. She actually reaches out. She actually responds to everyone. I can't say that I do that. I mean, I try, but okay, maybe that's my limiting belief. Maybe the trying. There is no try.
There's no try.
Or don't do.
Do or exactly.
All right. Well, the time has come and Sid's telling me the hour's up. I need to spend some quality time with him. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you the same times, same channels. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.